Do we currently have a stratified system of education? And I mean, do we have a class-based system?
In some respects, I guess you'd call it that, because it's partly based on where you live and what your income is. And of course, there's some areas that are more self-perpetuating than others, both in poverty and in wealth. But on the other hand, I mean, all the economic data is the United States is still like this roiling, constantly changing society where people shoot up and they make $1 million and their family loses everything and they're down in the bottom again. And the guy who has nothing makes money, and the technology changes and the businesses that are on top change. So there are issues of class, and certainly right now, for example, the kids who are raised in upper middle class families, they're given a lot of knowledge, they're given a lot of background. For example, there was a study out of Kansas State, that found that children from upper middle class families, I think middle class too, heard 30 million more words by the time they were out of childhood than lower class families. 30 million. Now, I mean, I don't remember exactly how they're counting them all. Does it include every A and the? But it's not really relevant. I mean, in the sense that that number is so gigantic that it really shows something. You know, now, no state is pushing that, right? It's that some families are more educated and more thoughtful and more ambitious, and they're talking a lot to their children. So, is that a class thing, or what is it exactly?
Is it an opportunity thing? Just because, for example, you do have communities that have been vastly destabilized.
Mm-hmm.
The family has been undermined.
Yes.
The economic base has been undermined. You have a system of dependence.
Yes.
That has, really taken root. You have perhaps large quantities of populations in those areas where there may be drug addiction or alcoholism or...
That's all created by the state. That's not created by a free market. There is a group of people, for example, who the parents are highly educated and they pass on a lot of knowledge, networking, and all that to their children, and those children are socially much more privileged than people who say come from a working class background but are brilliant and make their way up the academic ladder into a top university, for example. Mm-hmm. The upper middle class children with an academic background are going to have a lot of knowledge that the other people don't. But so what you do see a lot of networking and development of businesses and advantages with people like that.
Sure.
But it's not set in stone either.
Right.
I mean, you still have people who are just outliers and mavericks and coming from nowhere.
Right. It is interesting to me to think about that discrepancy in vocabulary. It's a stunning number.
Stunning.
It really is stunning.
Yeah.
But when you think about that, and you think about some of these destabilized communities that I was talking
Mm-hmm.
about earlier, and some of them are, sometimes it's very much tied to minority status. You have like
Mm-hmm.
large swaths of Black communities or Latino communities or whatever where this is started to. I think the family has actually survived better in Latino
Mm-hmm.
communities than it has in the Black community, but. When you think about what's happened in those communities, and I think you're right that this is largely created by the state. I mean, it's policy that has created these situations. But the children that are in those communities end up being the victims of those policies.
Yes.
And then, we keep piling more bad policy on top of more
Mm-hmm.
bad policy and more bad policy, and how it does in a way become difficult for a child who's in a destabilized community like that to crawl out of it. It's
terribly difficult.
It's not that it's impossible, but man,
no,
it's
they
difficult.
need help. They
yeah.
need a lot of help from other people.